Hello, everyone. My name is Helen Simonton, and I am the sales executive in OpenFifth. I'm going to talk to you all today about GDPR processes, what you can do with Koha and Aspen Discovery. We are recording this webinar, and it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel at OpenFifth Limited, alongside our other webinars and videos on our products and services. As always, we'll stop recording for the Q&A to allow for open discussion at the end. Now, I am going to assume that you were at the first webinar of my mini data protection and GDPR webinar series, how data protection is managed in Koha, because why would you not have been? If for some unimaginable reason you weren't at that webinar and haven't already caught up by watching the recording, I do feel very sorry for you, but the good news is you can head over to our YouTube channel at OpenFifth Limited and watch it there after this webinar, obviously. Then while you're there, you can also check out the What's on Our Mind videos that go into a little more detail on a few of the topics that I'm going to cover today. The ones that I've highlighted here are cookies information by Odd, data protection options in Koha by Sam, and configuring cookie consent on Aspen Discovery by Nason. I do mention a few other What's on Our Mind videos in the rest of the webinar, but we'll also send you out this information at the end. Now, if you'll remember from my webinar, how is data protection managed? I looked at settings and processes at the back end of the Koha library management system. In this webinar, GDPR processes, what you can do with Koha and Aspen Discovery, I'm going to briefly look at what your users experience and can control on the front end of Koha and Aspen Discovery. Unfortunately, I don't have time to cover everything or go into a great detail about each of the areas I mentioned, but hopefully this will give you enough of an idea of the different settings and options available in Koha and Aspen Discovery to think about it for your library going forward. I also covered a lot of the law on data protection in GDPR last time. So I'm not going to go back over that now. I'm just going to add in little bits specific to the topics that I'm covering here. Just before we fully dive in, I do talk specifically about UK data protection and GDPR law. Currently, the EU laws are the same as the UK, but they may change and laws in other regions may differ. So it's important that if you're not in the UK, you check your country and region's laws on this. It's also important to check in regularly because even the UK law can change on a going forward. The first thing I want to talk about are cookies. I was born in the 80s, so obviously I now have Cookie Monster shouting in my head, but I'm not going to try and do an impression of him. I'm going to tell you what a cookie is, because if you're anything like me, you will have learned what a cookie was at some point, thought, okay, that's great, but I don't need to remember that, and promptly turfed it out of your head. So a cookie is a small text file that is downloaded onto terminal equipment, so your computer or a phone, when the user accesses a website. It allows the website to recognize that user's device and store some information about the user's preference or past actions. So basically, websites use cookies to remember information about you. Sometimes it's essential for a website to use cookies, otherwise your experience of that website would not be the best experience it could or should be. Sometimes websites use optional cookies to gather information about user behavior. The UK Privacy and Electronic Communications regulations state that you must tell people the cookies are there, explain what the cookies are doing and why, and get the person's consent to store a cookie on their device. Consent must be actively and clearly given. There is an exception for cookies that are essential to provide an online service at someone's request. So, for example, to remember what's in an online basket or to ensure security in online banking. And the same rules also apply if you use any other type of technology to store or gain access to information on someone's device. The cookies Koha uses on the OPAC and in the staff interface are documented in the Koha community wiki. If you go to Koha administration on the staff interface and search for cookie, you will find cookie consent and cookie consented JS system preferences. Now, Odd brilliantly covers this how to set up a cookie information in Koha on her What's on Our Mind video, cookies information in Koha. So I'm going to recommend that if you want to set up your own cookie banner, you can watch that video after this webinar. Or the Koha manual itself is also a really great guide on how to help you do this. You can see, for example, the British Museum have a really lovely cookie consent banner that really explains exactly what it is that they're gathering and why they use the cookies on their Koha OPAC. For Aspen Discovery, Nason brilliantly covers configuring cookie consent on Aspen Discovery in his What's on Our Mind video. And the Aspen Discovery Help Center is a great resource. And if you go to the system administration and scroll down to cookies, you will find more information about that there. You can also see here on my slide that I've shown the East Dunbartonshire Library's Aspen Discovery because they just have a really lovely, simple cookie banner to explain to their users about it there. But I want to show you what it looks like on my account. So I'm going to come out of my slides and I am going to go to Aspen. Oh, whoops. So as you can see, we're in our Aspen demo and I have logged myself in. If I go to my account by clicking on the little hamburger, go to my account, and if I scroll down and if I go to account settings and my privacy settings, you can see here that Aspen is telling me what cookies and analytics are currently being used on this Aspen website. So we've got essential cookies, third-party analytics, and local analytics. I can very easily toggle them on and off and update my preferences, and that happens instantaneously. Um, yeah, that's all I wanted to tell you about that. So the next thing I want to talk about is your privacy policy. So a privacy policy is a document that outlines how an organization collects, uses, discloses, and manages personal data, informing users about their rights and the organization's data handling practices. You may or may not have ever noticed a website's privacy policy, but for example, the Open Fifth website has our privacy policy down here in the footer. You might want to put a link to your privacy policy on your Koha OPAC. I have two examples to show you here. So we've got the Arts University Bournemouth, and if you can just see this tiny little circle here, that's a link to their privacy policy. And then we've got Blackpool and Flyde College, where again, an even tinier little circle shows you their privacy policy. You can create a custom page for your privacy policy on your OPAC in the Tools module and Pages. Then you can add a link to that page on your OPAC through the HTML customizations, which is also found in the Tools module. You may want to consider the privacy policy consent system preference. This system preference makes a privacy policy consent form appear on the OPAC when a patron attempts to log in if this system preference is set to enforced. The patron will have to consent before they can gain access to their account details. If the patron does not consent to the privacy policy, they will be logged out of their account. If this system preference is set to permissive, the patron will see the privacy policy consent form, but they will not be required to give consent to access their account. If the system preference is set to disabled, no privacy policy consent form will appear, and by default, the system preference is set to default. Now, unfortunately, I have been hunting around on Aspen Discovery sites and I haven't found one that has a privacy policy on it. However, if you did want to add a privacy policy to your Aspen Discovery, it has a fantastic web builder functionality. So it would be incredibly easy to create a page for this and put it wherever you want to. So, for example, on the Western Isles Aspen Discovery page here, you can see that they've got links to their e-library, their services. It would be very easy to add another tab here and make it their privacy policy. Once again, the brilliant and lovely Odd did a What's on Our Mind video web resources pages in Aspen that you should absolutely check out. Okay, so You'll remember from my last webinar on how data protection is managed in Koha that I talked about recording search and holds histories and tracking clicks in the OPAC. What I didn't mention was recording circulation history and giving your users control over whether or not their histories are saved. This is one of those rabbit hole areas, so I'm going to do my best to keep it simple. On my slide here, you can see all the privacy system preferences. And the reason this area can be a bit of a rabbit hole is because many of these preferences relate to and impact each other. To ensure that your users can choose to not save their borrowing or hold history, you use the OPAC privacy system preference, which is this one here. However, this requires the OPAC reading history, which is the one slightly above it, to be set to allow, and your anonymous patron, which is this one here, to be set to your anonymous patron's borrower number. This is because OPAC reading history determines whether or not patrons have access to their circulation history from their account in the OPAC. An anonymous patron anonymizes the circulation data as soon as an item is checked back in. I did talk about Anonymous Patron in my last webinar, but I also did a standalone What's on My Mind video to discuss the difference between anonymization and pseudonymization, so I won't cover that again. I am going to show you what it looks like on the OPAC, but I'm going to actually jump out and look at the OPAC itself. So if I go to my account, you can see that I'm on the dashboard here. And if I click into my name there, that'll take me to my actual account. And then I go to the little menu along the left-hand side here. And if I go to privacy, you can see that the OPAC has a lovely little message about your privacy management. I can choose to either forever keep my history without limit. I can choose the default, which keeps my history according to the library policy that the library has set up, or I can choose never, which deletes my history immediately. Just to be clear, when an item is checked out or a hold is placed on that item, the user information has to be recorded regardless of the privacy option they have chosen. What we're talking about here are the options a user has over that data when an item is checked back in or a hold has been fulfilled or cancelled. The user can also delete their checkout and hold history immediately. So if I scroll down here, you can see that I have the option to delete my checkout history, delete my hold history, and delete both together. However, once you've confirmed the deletion, that information cannot be retrieved. This is quite a lot, and I have skimmed over it, quite high skimmed over it. So if you are a customer of OpenFifth, or if you would like to become a customer of OpenFifth, our lovely and amazing team will help you with this. For Aspen Discovery, if I go back to my Aspen Discovery account, it allows users to opt in to track items they have borrowed from the library, both in print and electronic. When a user first clicks into their reading history in my account, they are presented with a message to opt into reading history. So you can see on the left-hand side here, if I go down to reading history and click onto that, because I have already been in to my reading history, I'm not getting that initial message as a new user. But what I can do is click on what's this, and it gives you a lovely little summary of what's happening on this page. It's also giving me all of the history of my circulation. And I also have the option, I can delete ones individually, I can delete them all in one go, and I can request at any time that Aspen stops recording my reading history. Then the next thing that I want to talk about is messaging. And I just need to skip ahead a couple of slides on my slideshow. The enhanced messaging preference in Koha allows staff to manage which notices patrons will receive and when they will receive them, except for overdue notices, which are sent based on the library's rules. Setting this preference to allow will allow staff to choose for patrons to receive any one of the following messages. Check Item checkout, which is a notice that lists all of the items the patron has checked out and or renewed. So it's basically like a receipt. Item due is a notice sent on the day an item is due back at the library. Hold filled lets the user know when you have confirmed the hold is waiting for them. Item checked in is the same as ice checked out, but for all the items that a patron has just checked in. An advanced notice lets staff choose the number of days in advance a notice is sent to users that their items are due. And if you notice here, I've also highlighted this little link that comes up in the system preferences in Koha, which is really useful because it takes you to everything that is related to that system preference. The other thing that you might want to pay attention to in this one is just these little SMS messages. So if you use SMS messaging, you're going to want to look at those too. But you may want to allow your users to control what messages they get. The Enhanced Messaging Preferences OPAC system preference gives your users that control. So I'm going to show you what that looks like in the OPAC. So once again, we're still in my account in the OPAC. And if I go scroll down through the left-hand side menu button and go to messaging, you can see here that I have the option to check how I want to receive my messages, so either by email or by SMS, and which type of messages that I want. So I'm quite restrictive. I only want to know about interlibrary loans or items checked or items due, sorry. But I also might want to know whether or not a hold has been filled. So if I check that button and just submit my changes, you can see that that instantaneously updates. Just to note that this preference does require that the enhanced messaging preference be set to allow first. So basically, you need to allow your staff members to control the messaging that are sent to your patrons before your patrons can control what can be sent to them. In Aspen Discovery, if I go to my account in Aspen Discovery, which I am still in, and if I go to account settings and messaging settings, the way users control how they are notified is dependent on the ILS configuration. Luckily, we're only talking about Koha and Aspen Discovery, so how I have set my account in Koha is pulled through to Aspen Discovery. In my account settings, you can see that it looks exactly the same as it did in Koha. It's just in a slightly different order, but you can see that I've got all of my interlibrary loans checked, I've got my hold fill check that I did just now, and I've got my item due checked. I'm going to go back to my slides and I'm now going to start talking about linked accounts. If you have linked accounts in your library, for example, as parents and children's, caregivers, neighbours, and any other situation where a user needs to manage multiple accounts, you may want to consider the guarantees choice. In the UK, children have the same rights as adults over their personal data, and a child may exercise their rights on their own behalf as long as they are competent to do so. Therefore, I'm going to work under the assumption that the guarantee is competent to make decisions about their own personal data. And so the system preferences in Koha that we want to look at are allow patron to set checkouts visibility for guarantor and allow patron to set fines visibility for guarantor. These allow the guarantees, so for example, in this scenario, a child, to grant permission to the guarantors, in this scenario, their parent or a guardian, to view their account checkouts and fines if you accrue fines, if your library allows children to accrue fines via the public catalogue. This system preference requires that you allow the patrons to choose their own privacy within the OPAC privacy preference that I mentioned earlier. And if I jump very quickly to the OPAC and I go to my summary, and then you can see relatives checkout. This is the little robin that lives in my garden, whose account that I help to manage. So I can see the items that they have checked out and I can control what happens with them. In Aspen Discovery, if you allow linked accounts, users can click on Add Account to add additional library card or cards. So if I go once again to my account settings and go to linked accounts, you can see here that Robin is linked to my account and I could remove it at any time. I could also add another account. I will need the user barcode and I will also need the password or PIN to be able to add that account. You can also see here that no accounts can manage my account, and I could disable account linking at any time. This is another rabbit hole, and I don't have time to go into detail about this, but another option for how to control linking accounts is within the patron types themselves. So when setting patron types, it is possible to set that a patron type only be allowed to be linked to and to link to others, which is the default. They can only be able to link to, or they can only be a link to others, or they could block all linking. That made absolutely no sense. So basically, you can set a patron type so that I can be linked to a guarantee, but no guarantor can be linked to me. Finally, your library users may wish to know what information that the library holds about them. There are two ways to do this in Koha. First, each patron account can export the data held in each table. For example, the circulation history holds circulation history or holds history. So you can see here I've got the export button, and if I just jump to the staff interface to look at my patron account, if I go to circulation history here, oh, sorry about that, I should have logged in properly. So I'm in my circulation history in my patron account, and I can export that in a variety of different ways. I can also go to my holds history for this table, and I can export that in a variety of different ways. Alternatively, you could run a report and you could require whatever tables that these are involved and do a report for that user. Okay. That was a very, very fast, very brief overview. I have very much skimmed the surface of GDPR processes, but I do hope that it's giving you an idea of what both Koha and Aspen Discovery can do. I'm going to stop the recording in a moment ahead of the attendee Q&A session, but before that, I'd like to just point you to your upcoming webinar topics for June and July. And yeah, if Sam, do you want to stop the recording?